Hey, Jim.
So, Doc, have you figured out a way to cure me yet?
I haven't, but that's something I think we can figure out together. Let's start where we left off. At the very end of our conversation on Monday, you expressed some skepticism about your ability to make the behavioral changes necessary to win back the trust of Susan and Jose. I think it's important that we address your skepticism up front. Tell me, for you to feel confident that you will make the changes necessary to retain and develop new employees, what questions would you need to have answers to? For example, if I were in your shoes, one of my questions would be, how do I make it safe for Susan and Jose to approach me with questions and concerns?
Yep, I definitely need an answer to that.
Good. What other questions would you need answers to?
How do I keep myself from talking so much?
Great. Building on that idea, how can I listen in a way that lets them know that they're being heard?
Well, for one thing, I could start by telling them what I like about their idea before shooting it down for the obvious pitfalls.
I think that that is an excellent idea, Jim. Another question I think you might want to ask yourself here is, what can I do to ensure that they understand the requirements and are on track to deliver?
Well, I suppose I could check with them a few days into the assignment to see how they're doing and to get them back on track if they aren't already.
Good. What other questions bubble up when you think about what's happening with Jose and Susan?
How do I make it up to Jose?
Are you feeling badly about criticizing him in the meeting last week? Looking back, what do you wish you had done differently?
Well, for starters, I wish I'd spent more time discussing the parts of his proposal that I liked before moving to my critique. I wish I'd asked him the questions that would have revealed the need for more research. Then, instead of admonishing him in the meeting for not having consulted our internal resources, I wish I'd asked him to come back to my office where I could go through the directory with him and show him the key people he should be talking to about this kind of stuff.
That sounds right to me, Jim. Putting myself in Jose's shoes, I'm imagining that I'd feel much more respected and supported than I do now. So let's review the questions that we've listed so far. How do I make it safe for Susan and Jose to approach me with questions and concerns? How do I keep myself from talking so much? How can I listen in a way that lets them know that they're being heard? What can I do to ensure that they understand the requirements and are on track to deliver? How do I make it up to Jose? Now, which of these questions feel the most relevant to you?
How can I listen in a way that lets them know that they've been heard? And how do I make it up to Jose?
Good. Any other questions trying to get out?
Why do I always do this? What causes me to miss what others need from me?
Are there any other questions you can think of that we haven't written down yet?
Well, no, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, Jim. Let's return to Jose. I'm curious, when you look even further back in time, is there anything else that you wish you had done differently?
What do you mean?
For example, what might you have done differently before the meeting?
Well, as I said, I'd give clearer instructions up front, and I'd check in with them in a few days to make sure they're on the right track.
Now, what would that look like? What changes would you make to how you give instructions? For example, what would have been different about the way you gave Jose instructions for Project Green?
Well, I could have spelled out the key tasks, questions, really that the proposal should answer, and point out all the great resources we have here for getting some of these questions answered.
Sounds good. Is there anything else you wish you'd done differently here?
No, that would have been enough.
Well, Jim, here's what I've written down regarding how you said you want to develop your employees going forward. When delegating, 1. Spell out the key tasks and questions that the project and proposal should answer and achieve. 2. Include any expectations that I have about what steps and resources have been taken or consulted. And 3. Check in with them in a few days to make sure that they are on the right track. And when reviewing, start by telling them what I like about what they did. And then 2, express my concerns in the form of questions instead of criticisms. And 3, discuss performance-related concerns in private. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you did a really nice job of summarizing what we've talked about.
Good. So, now that you know how you would like to behave going forward, let's look at what could get in your way of making these changes. Is there anyone who might object to you behaving this way?
Well, I doubt it. I think everyone would consider this a plus.
Great. Now how about you? Are there any parts of you that might object to you sitting down with Jose and Susan and taking the time it would really take to walk through the requirements for a new project and your thoughts about how the project should be handled?
Well, yes, there are. That part of me that prides himself on having a staff I don't have to handhold through every little task.
How would it feel to pride yourself on being an outstanding mentor and talent developer?
I think that'd feel pretty good.
Awesome. And how do you imagine feeling when you check in with them a few days later?
Well, paternal, but in a good way.
Cool. Sounds like you've got a couple of behaviors here that you would feel comfortable weaving into your leadership style, yes?
Yes.
What are some upcoming opportunities to put this into practice?
Well, later this afternoon I'm meeting with Susan to talk about a new assignment I have for her. I guess I'll be trying this out then, won't I?
Good. Let's make sure you're primed for success when you go into that meeting.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, whenever we try to change your behavior, there is always the risk that we'll fall into autopilot mode and start running plays from the old playbook instead of the new one, especially right at the beginning or when we're under stress. I want to be sure that you don't fall into autopilot during your debut this afternoon, and I know a little trick about keeping your behavior aligned with your intention.
Okay, let's hear it.
The trick is to articulate your objective for how you want to behave in that meeting in the form of a question. For example, take the second behavior on your list. If you enter this afternoon's meeting in the question, "What resources will Susan need to complete this task to my satisfaction?" you will be much less likely to fall into the old behavior of expecting her to intuit your expectations. Make sense?
It does, in fact. Just hearing the question reminded me that there are a couple of documents I should print out before Susan gets here.
Excellent. Now, what question could you use to ensure that you spell out the key results the project should achieve?
What are the key results I expect Susan to deliver?
Perfect. Sounds like you're ready to try out these new behaviors in your meeting with Susan this afternoon.
Yes.